Imagine a vast empire, rich in cultures and lands, governed by powerful and respected kings. In this grand setting, emerges the story of a boy destined to become one of the most famous emperors of antiquity. His name is Xerxes, and his journey begins long before his ascension to the throne. Xerxes was born in 519 BC, the son of the great king Darius I and Queen Atossa. From an early age, his life was marked by an environment of power and responsibility. Darius, his father, was not just a ruler. He was a visionary, a man who expanded the Persian Empire to unimaginable heights, making it the largest empire the world had ever seen. Xerxes grew up watching his father govern with wisdom and strength, learning the complexities of leadership and the administration of a vast territory. Queen Atossa, on the other hand, was a woman of great intelligence and influence. The daughter of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, she carried the legacy of a glorious heritage. Atossa educated Xerxes with stories of the great conquests of his ancestors, instilling in him a deep sense of duty and pride in his royal blood. She taught him the importance of justice, courage, and compassion, virtues that would be fundamental for his future reign. During his youth, Xerxes was trained in the arts of war and diplomacy. He learned to wield the sword and the bow, to command armies, and to negotiate with cunning. His teachers were the best the empire could offer, and his lessons were not limited to battlefields and council rooms. Xerxes was instructed in philosophy, history, and religion, developing a sharp mind and strategic vision. But Xerxes' education was not just theoretical. He accompanied his father on campaigns, closely observing the realities of wars and conquests. He witnessed the celebrations of victories, but also felt the weight of defeats and the consequences of tough decisions. These experiences shaped his character, preparing him for the challenges he would face as a future king. As he grew, Xerxes began to understand that his destiny was not just to govern, but to protect and expand the legacy of his ancestors. He knew that one day the weight of the crown would fall on his shoulders, and he was determined to be ready for that moment. Xerxes' childhood and youth were thus an intense and rigorous preparation for the role he was destined to play. And so, amid the splendor and intrigues of the Persian court, the young heir grew, molding himself to become Xerxes I, the great king of the Persian Empire. The great Darius I, after years of wise governance and victorious expansions, reached the end of his life. The empire was at a delicate moment, where the balance of power was crucial. Xerxes, his son, watched his father's decline with a mixture of sadness and determination. He knew that the moment he had prepared for all his life was about to arrive. When Darius finally rested, the empire felt a collective sigh. Xerxes then had to face the harsh reality of succession. He was not the only heir, but he was Darius' chosen one, which did not mean automatic and unanimous acceptance. His brothers and other nobles of the empire saw this transition as an opportunity to contest the throne. The tension was palpable in the air as preparations for the coronation advanced. Xerxes had to demonstrate from the beginning that he was the right choice to lead the vast Persian Empire. In a ceremony marked by splendor and tradition, Xerxes was crowned in Pasargadae, the ancient Persian capital, where kings were honored and blessed by the gods. The coronation ceremony was grand. The gardens and palaces were decorated with luxurious tapestries, and the empire's elite gathered to witness the birth of a new reign. Zoroastrian priests conducted sacred rituals, invoking the blessing of Ahura Mazda upon the new king. Xerxes, wearing a white linen tunic and a jewel-adorned crown, knelt before the altar, promising to rule with justice and wisdom. But the coronation was just the beginning. Xerxes needed to consolidate his power and assert his authority. He began his reign by reaffirming alliances and negotiating with the leaders of the various provinces of the empire. His mother, the influential Atossa, was a crucial ally, helping to stabilize internal relations and secure the support of the most powerful nobles. Xerxes also had to deal with immediate revolts. In Babylon, for instance, local rulers took advantage of Darius' death to rebel. Xerxes acted swiftly, personally leading Persian forces to suppress the rebellion, demonstrating both his military skill and his determination to maintain the unity of the empire. The new king knew that his legitimacy would come not only from military victories or royal heritage, but also from his ability to rule with wisdom and fairness. He implemented administrative reforms, strengthening the empire's infrastructure and promoting economic development. The challenges were immense, but from the first day of his reign, Xerxes showed that he was up to his legacy. He was now the great king of the Persian Empire, and the world eagerly awaited to see how he would shape the future of one of the greatest civilizations in history. With the crown firmly on his head and the support of the empire secured, Xerxes turned his eyes beyond the Persian borders. His dreams of expansion were not just about increasing territories, but about consolidating the power and influence of the Persian Empire across the known world. Xerxes knew that to be remembered as a great king, he needed to achieve extraordinary feats, and this included the daunting task of subduing Greece. Greece, with its independent and proud city-states, represented both a challenge and an opportunity for Xerxes. His father, Darius, had attempted to subjugate them but failed. Now, Xerxes wanted not only to complete what Darius had started, but also to demonstrate to the world the invincibility of the empire. In 480 BC, Xerxes assembled one of the largest armies the ancient world had ever seen. From all parts of the vast empire, troops converged to form a colossal force. There were Persians, Medes, Babylonians, Egyptians, Lydians, and many others, each contingent bringing its own culture, weapons, and tactics. This grand coalition of nations symbolized the unity and diversity of the empire under Xerxes' leadership. The crossing of the Hellespont was a remarkable feat of engineering and organization. Xerxes ordered the construction of boat bridges to transport his massive army across the strait separating Asia from Europe. This logistical spectacle was a clear demonstration of the Persian capacity to overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges. With the Persian army advancing through Thrace and Macedonia, the Greek city-states realized the gravity of the approaching threat. Some chose to resist, while others, fearing Xerxes' overwhelming power, submitted. The resistance, however, reached its peak at the Battle of Thermopylae. Led by the Spartan king Leonidas, a small contingent of Greeks, including the legendary 300 Spartans, made a fierce stand at Thermopylae, a narrow pass that would become an eternal symbol of bravery and sacrifice. Xerxes, confident in the numerical superiority and strength of his army, underestimated the determination of the Greeks. For 3 days, the Greek defenders repelled wave after wave of Persian attacks, inflicting heavy casualties and showing the world that the spirit of freedom would not be easily crushed. Despite the heroic resistance at Thermopylae, the numerical and strategic advantage of the Persians prevailed. Xerxes eventually managed to defeat the defenders and advance into the heart of Greece. Athens was evacuated and subsequently burned, marking a symbolic victory for Xerxes. However, this would not be the decisive battle. The true test came at the Battle of Salamis, a naval battle where the Greeks, using strategic intelligence and local knowledge of the waters, managed to deliver a devastating blow to the Persian navy. The defeat at Salamis was a hard hit for Xerxes, forcing him to reconsider his ambitions of total conquest. Although the campaign in Greece did not achieve all its goals, it solidified Xerxes' image as an ambitious and relentless leader. He returned to the empire to focus on internal administration and other challenges, but the battles and conquests in Greek lands remained one of the most impressive and dramatic chapters of his reign. Imagine the scene: a narrow mountain pass surrounded by towering mountains and the shimmering blue sea in the background. This was the stage for one of the most epic and legendary battles in ancient history, the Battle of Thermopylae, where Xerxes I, the great king of the Persian Empire, faced a small Greek force determined to defend their land to the last man. Xerxes, with his vast army that seemed infinite, marched confidently toward Greece. His spies and scouts brought news of a tiny force daring to block his path at Thermopylae. Led by the Spartan king Leonidas, 300 Spartan warriors, accompanied by a few thousand allies from other Greek city-states, prepared for the fight of their lives. The numerical disparity was overwhelming, but Leonidas and his men were determined to show the world that courage and freedom could challenge any oppressor. When the two armies met, Xerxes sent a messenger to Leonidas, offering him a chance to surrender. Leonidas' response was simple and famous: "Come and take them." This challenge resonated deeply with both the Greeks and the Persians. It was a signal that the defenders were ready to fight to the end. The battle began with waves of Persian attacks. Xerxes sent his Median troops, expecting a quick and decisive victory. However, the Greeks, taking advantage of the narrow terrain, repelled attack after attack. The Spartan phalanxes, with their interlocking shields and lethal spears, created an impenetrable wall. The Persian troops, accustomed to easy victories, encountered fierce and unexpected resistance. Frustrated by the lack of progress, Xerxes sent his personal guard, the Immortals, an elite force of warriors trained to be invincible. Even they, however, found it difficult to break through the Greek lines. Day after day, the pass at Thermopylae turned into a bloody battlefield where Greek bravery and discipline overshadowed Persian numerical superiority. The battle took a decisive turn when a Greek traitor named Ephialtes revealed to Xerxes a secret path through the mountains that allowed him to flank the defenders. Taking advantage of this strategic opportunity, Xerxes ordered his troops to advance through this path, surrounding the Greeks from both sides. Leonidas, realizing the inevitability of defeat, dismissed most of his allied forces, remaining only with his 300 Spartans and a few loyal warriors. At the dawn of the third day, the Spartans and their remaining allies prepared for their final stand. Surrounded and outnumbered, they fought with desperate ferocity, determined to sell their lives as dearly as possible. Leonidas fell in battle, but his spirit of resistance inspired his men to keep fighting to their last breath. Although the Persians finally won the battle, the victory came at a tremendous cost. The courage of the defenders at Thermopylae resonated throughout Greece, uniting the city-states in a common effort against the invader. Xerxes, despite having cleared the way to advance, realized that conquering Greece would be much harder than he had imagined. The Battle of Thermopylae became an eternal symbol of bravery, sacrifice, and the fight for freedom. The story of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans echoes to this day as an example of what it means to face impossible challenges with honor and determination. And for Xerxes, it was a reminder that even the greatest empires could be challenged by the courage of a few. After the heroic resistance of the Greeks at Thermopylae, Xerxes advanced with his army, devastating cities and imposing his dominance. Athens, one of the jewels of Greece, was evacuated and burned, a symbol of victory for Xerxes. But the war was far from over. The decisive battle was yet to come, and it would take place in the blue waters of the Saronic Gulf, near the island of Salamis. The Greeks, led by the cunning Athenian general Themistocles, knew that their best chance of victory lay at sea. The Greek city-states gathered their naval forces, a fleet of triremes, light and fast ships ideal for agile maneuvers in confined waters. Themistocles planned a trap for the Persians, feigning a retreat and luring Xerxes' vast fleet into the narrow strait of Salamis. Xerxes, confident in the numerical superiority and grandeur of his fleet, fell into the trap. He believed he could crush the Greeks once and for all and solidify his control over Greece. From a golden throne strategically placed on a hill to watch the battle, Xerxes observed with anticipation, certain of his imminent victory. At dawn on the decisive day, the Persian ships advanced towards the strait, where the Greeks were positioned. The number of Persian ships was impressive, a force that seemed unstoppable. However, as they entered the narrow waters, the Persian advantage began to dissipate. The tight waters made it difficult for the large and heavy Persian ships to maneuver, while the smaller, more agile Greek triremes moved with ease. Chaos quickly ensued. The crowded and disorganized Persian ships became easy targets for the experienced Greek sailors. Taking advantage of the confusion, Themistocles launched his fleet with surgical precision, striking the vulnerable flanks of the Persian ships. The battle turned into a naval massacre. The sea filled with debris and bodies, while fire and blood stained the once serene waters. From his hilltop, Xerxes watched in disbelief as his fleet was decimated. Pride and confidence turned to despair and fury. He saw his power challenged in a way he had never imagined. The defeat at Salamis was not just a military loss. It was a deep blow to the morale and psychology of the Persian army. With the Persian navy in ruins, Xerxes realized that the invasion of Greece could not continue as planned. He withdrew most of his forces, leaving his general Mardonius with an army to try to consolidate control on land. But the tide of war had turned. The Greeks, inspired by their naval victory, united with renewed determination, knowing they could face and defeat the mighty Persian Empire. The Battle of Salamis was a crucial turning point in the Second Greco-Persian War. The boldness and strategy of the Greeks, contrasting with the arrogance and underestimation by Xerxes, resulted in a historic victory that echoed through the centuries. For Xerxes, it was a painful lesson about the limits of power and the importance of cunning over brute force. As Xerxes returned to Susa, he carried with him the bitter memory of Salamis. The revenge he sought against the Greeks had turned into his own humiliation, and the great king of the Persian Empire saw his dream of conquering Greece slip away like sand through his fingers. After his military campaigns, Xerxes turned his attention to the capital of the empire, Susa. Susa was not only the administrative center of the Persian Empire, it was a place of splendor, intrigues, and a stage where power was constantly contested and consolidated. Imagine entering the palace of Susa. Vast halls decorated with polished marble, richly embroidered tapestries, and gardens that seemed like paradise on earth. Fountains and lakes reflected the sunlight, creating an atmosphere of peace and opulence. This was the world Xerxes ruled, a setting that impressed all visitors and ambassadors who came there. Life in the Persian court was a mixture of constant luxury and politics. Xerxes, seated on his throne, was not just a king but a symbol of divine power. His advisors, nobles, and ministers were always around him, each seeking favor and influence. Among them was Mardonius, his cousin and loyal general, who remained one of his main advisors and military leaders. The court of Susa was also a center of culture and knowledge. Xerxes promoted the construction of grand architectural works and encouraged the development of the arts. Poets, philosophers, and scholars were welcome in his court, contributing to a cultural flourishing that further enriched the empire. Education was valued, and Xerxes personally showed interest in the stories and traditions that united the diverse peoples under his rule. However, the luxury of the court hid a web of intrigues and conspiracies. Ambitious nobles and political rivals constantly plotted to gain more power and influence. Xerxes had to be a master of diplomacy and politics to maintain the stability of his government. He had to balance the loyalty of his generals, the fidelity of his ministers, and the support of the various provinces that made up his vast empire. Queen Amestris, Xerxes' wife, also played a crucial role in the court. Known for her beauty and intelligence, she was a constant presence by the king's side. Amestris not only helped in the administration of the palace but also in mediating conflicts and maintaining internal relations. Her influence was significant, and many saw her as a powerful figure capable of shaping decisions and directing the course of events. Daily life in the palace was punctuated by sumptuous banquets and grand festivals. The banquets, in particular, were events where the elite gathered to discuss politics, forge alliances, and sometimes plot against enemies. These events were filled with exotic dishes, enchanting music, and hypnotic dances, a display of wealth and culture that impressed all present. But despite all the grandeur and politics, Xerxes never forgot his responsibilities as a ruler. He kept a watchful eye on the provinces, sending emissaries to ensure his orders were carried out and that the empire remained united. His administration was efficient and often severe, but also just ensuring that peace and prosperity were maintained in all regions. Thus, in the heart of the luxurious palace of Susa, Xerxes ruled with a combination of power, wisdom, and strategy. He was more than a conqueror. He was a king who understood the complexity of his empire and the need to balance strength with diplomacy. And under his command, Susa flourished as a symbol of the power and glory of the Persian Empire. In the heart of the vast Persian Empire, religion played a crucial role in daily life and politics. Xerxes I, following in the footsteps of his predecessors, was a devout follower of Zoroastrianism, the ancient religion founded by the prophet Zoroaster. This faith, which preached the duality of good and evil, the importance of truth, and devotion to Ahura Mazda, deeply influenced how Xerxes governed his empire and made decisions. From a young age, Xerxes was immersed in the teachings of Zoroastrianism. He learned about the eternal struggle between Ahura Mazda, the god of light and truth, and Engar Mainyu, the spirit of evil and darkness. This dualistic worldview shaped his perspective and actions, both in war and in peace. He believed that, as a king, he had a sacred duty to promote good, protect his people, and fight against the forces of evil. In Susa, the capital of the empire, Xerxes built temples and altars dedicated to Ahura Mazda. These sanctuaries were not only places of worship but also centers of justice and morality. The Magi, Zoroastrian priests, played a vital role in the court, advising the king on spiritual and ethical matters. Their words and interpretations of sacred texts influenced the empire's policies, from laws to military campaigns. Xerxes saw his struggle against the Greeks and other rebellious nations as part of this cosmic battle between good and evil. The defeats at Thermopylae and Salamis were not just military failures but also spiritual challenges. He sought the approval and blessing of Ahura Mazda before each major decision, performing rituals and offerings to secure divine favor. When campaigns did not go as planned, he turned to the Magi to interpret signs and seek guidance. Xerxes' faith also influenced his internal policies. He promoted justice and truth, central values of Zoroastrianism, in his government. Persian laws were rigorously enforced, and corruption was severely punished. Xerxes believed that a just and honest government was an expression of supreme good, and that by maintaining order and justice, he was serving the will of Ahura Mazda. However, the empire's diversity presented unique challenges. The various cultures and religions within the empire often had different practices and beliefs. In his wisdom, Xerxes adopted a policy of religious tolerance, allowing his subjects to practice their own faiths as long as they did not disrespect Zoroastrian authority and the empire's peace. This policy of tolerance helped maintain stability and cohesion in such a vast and varied territory. A notable example of this policy was Xerxes' relationship with the exiled Jews in Babylon. Influenced by the Zoroastrian belief in justice and freedom, Xerxes allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, a gesture that solidified alliances and promoted peace. However, this tolerance was not always easy to maintain. Revolts and insurrections, like that in Egypt, often had religious motivations beyond political and economic ones. Xerxes needed to balance firmness with understanding, showing strength when necessary but also wisdom and compassion. The impact of Zoroastrianism on Xerxes' life and governance cannot be underestimated. His faith guided his actions, policies, and wars. He saw himself as a defender of good, a champion of truth, and a servant of Ahura Mazda. And though he faced many challenges and defeats, Xerxes' unwavering faith in Zoroastrianism and his divine role as king sustained and inspired him, leaving a legacy of devotion and justice that would continue to influence the empire long after his reign. The vast Persian Empire, with its countless cultures and ethnicities, was a complex tapestry of loyalties and rivalries. Maintaining the cohesion of such an extensive territory required more than just military strength. It demanded diplomacy, wisdom, and constant vigilance. For Xerxes I, the challenge of governance came not only from external enemies but also from within his own borders. After the campaigns in Greece and Egypt, Xerxes faced a series of internal challenges that threatened his authority. Betrayals and revolts sprang up in different corners of the empire, each with its own motivations and charismatic leaders. One of the greatest challenges came from the heart of the empire, Babylon. Known for its wealth and strategic importance, Babylon had always been a difficult region to govern. Dissatisfied with Persian administration and inspired by local leaders, the Babylonians rebelled, declaring independence and expelling Persian officials. Xerxes knew that losing Babylon would be a devastating blow to his empire. Xerxes responded swiftly and harshly. He sent an army under the command of his most trusted generals to suppress the rebellion. The campaign was tough and bloody. The streets of Babylon turned into battlefields where the Persians fought fiercely to recapture the city. After weeks of intense fighting, the rebellion was finally crushed. Xerxes ordered strict measures to ensure such a revolt would not happen again. including the execution of the rebel leaders and the imposition of even tighter control over the region. But Babylon was not the only challenge. In the eastern provinces, nomadic tribes and local governors also showed signs of discontent. The Persian administration, though efficient, was often seen as oppressive and distant. Xerxes had to balance force with diplomacy, offering concessions where possible and using force when necessary. Within his own court, betrayal was not absent. Conspiracies and palace intrigues were a constant in the life of a king. Xerxes had to be ever vigilant for the movements of his own nobles and generals, some of whom harbored ambitions for more power or nurtured hidden resentments. Trust was a precious and rare currency in the Persian court. Xerxes relied on a network of spies and informants to stay ahead of any conspiracy. A notable case of betrayal came from his own brother, Xerxes. Ambitious and resentful of being passed over in the line of succession, Xerxes began plotting against Xerxes. When his intentions were discovered, Xerxes acted quickly to neutralize the threat. Xerxes was imprisoned and executed, a harsh and necessary lesson for those who thought of challenging the king. Besides revolts and betrayals, there were also the challenges of governing a multi-ethnic empire. Cultural diversity was both a strength and a weakness. Xerxes needed to ensure that each group within his empire felt respected and represented while maintaining unity and central authority. He promoted a policy of religious and cultural tolerance, allowing each region to maintain its own traditions as long as they recognized Persian sovereignty. These internal challenges shaped Xerxes' reign as much as his military campaigns. Every suppressed revolt, every uncovered betrayal, reinforced the complexity and fragility of imperial power. Xerxes had to learn to navigate these turbulent waters, using both a firm hand and subtle diplomacy to maintain control over his vast domain. Ultimately, Xerxes' ability to handle internal betrayals and revolts demonstrated his skill as a ruler. He was not just a conqueror, but also a shrewd administrator, capable of balancing strength and wisdom to maintain the empire's stability. Despite the challenges and constant threats, Xerxes continued to reign, keeping the Persian Empire united under his firm and resolute command.